Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Civics 101 session 4 reschedule for how to help out at your polling place and also how to ask for help if you need it. My name is Maria Medina Milner. I'm your host for this evening, Vice President of Community Relations and Equity and Inclusion at the League of Women Voters. I see that I already have somebody who's raised their hand so far. So yes, if you can ask any of your questions if you're on our Zoom webinar. If you can go ahead and type in the question and answer box, I can go ahead and answer your questions through there. And so if you could, yeah. Oh, my sound is kind of low. Thank you for letting me know. I do have issues with my sound occasionally. Okay, is that better? I know that that is an issue at times. Okay. Okay, so it's yes a little. Okay, I've bumped up my audio, so hopefully y'all can hear me now. I'm also trying to raise my voice. I don't want to overwhelm folks in case the audio is too loud. Okay, now it's perfect. Thank you so much for letting me know. And we'll go ahead and proceed from here. So if you've been, thank you. If you've been attending these sessions so far, and if you haven't, let's go ahead and just recap a little bit about the Civics 101 sessions with the League of Women Voters of the Austin area. What we're trying to achieve with these sessions is to make sure that our community is able to access answers to questions they might have from everything from voter registration to hopefully pass the election and how to become involved in advocating for your community or for your special interests, regardless of what those areas are. And so a couple of the things that I wanted to start with was just to let you know about the League of Women Voters. We offer voter registration services. It's probably one of our more popular offerings that people know us for. Our most popular one being the Voter's Guide, which is coming out very soon. I believe it's October 16th in the Austin Chronicle. Is our English voter guides that will be available. Spanish voter guides will also be available in print with community members. They'll be available for pickup at different locations. We are also, for the first time, offering Chinese and Vietnamese voter guides for this election. Those will be offered online through lwvaustin.org. You can find all of our voter guides, English, Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese, at lwvaustin.org. So with that, I also want to talk a little bit about vote411.org or vote411.org. It's an incredibly valuable resource for also gaining election information, ballot information. You can look it up by your address. You can look up your information by your address and get an idea of what's going to be on your ballot. There might be some bond issues with schools. We'll be talking about school elections and bonds and Board of Trustee elections in our upcoming session, October 2nd. And I'll give you a reminder of information on that at the end of this video recording. So it's vote411.org. That it's really important to put the .org at the end of it because as with other elections, there is now kind of a new awareness that there might be other folks who are looking to capitalize on sounding like vote 411, but not actually giving that information, that nonpartisan information that the League is known for, available to our community at large. We're also doing candidate forums. In fact, tonight there should be a candidate forum for City of Austin City Council, I believe one of District 6, if I'm not mistaken. I could be though, so you just want to make sure that you're keeping up with lwvaustin.org, or you can find our information on Facebook as well at LWV Austin Area. And we'll have more information on different candidate forums as they come up, but we do have candidate forum information for this coming election for the City of Austin. High school voter education and registration program. It's known as First Vote. It's a great program if you're looking to get involved with helping new young voters get registered to kind of have an idea of how to find that information that they need so that they can become well-educated voters. It's our First Vote program, and that's through our Voter Services division. So we also have policy presentations. Some of you may be familiar with what was formerly known as Pinot and Policy, which are these kind of 1.5 hour discussions on different policies, whether it's on medical issues and how public policy is constructed around those. And right now we're kind of addressing issues on COVID-19 and schools. So there's a lot of really good programming out here for our Austin area folks in regards to policy presentations. You don't want to miss out on that. And voter education programs such as Civics 101. This is one of our newer initiatives, so we are kind of trying it out this first year and see how it goes. But it's been a long time coming, as a lot of folks have let us know that they've been looking to have a kind of a place where they can come to and ask all of these kind of civics questions, and there really is nothing silly about it. There's nothing too small to be considered for this, because we are all on this adventure, all on this journey of learning about voter education, voter registration, voter outreach, voter advocacy, and policy advocacy eventually together. So with that said, I just wanted to go ahead and cover a few of these things. We are a nonpartisan political organization. Our primary focus is to make sure that people get registered and get out to vote. And we try to do our best at presenting public policy information with a pros and cons approach according to kind of what may be on people's minds. So, and again, I want to stress vote411.org. It's .org for your ballot information needs. So again, this is polling place help, asking and assisting at the polling place for Civics 101 Session 4, rescheduled from this past Saturday, September 19th. So we're going to start with asking for help at your polling place. I know that the way that this session has been structured was to put assisting first. A lot of folks are really interested in that, so I have no doubt that we'll be able to go over that. But I do want to go over asking for help first, as there is a lot of ground to cover there. So it's really, who needs to know this? Every voter should know this. Everyone, regardless of their ability or age or needs, whether it's due to language or other issues, should know this, because a lot of us might have friends or family associates who are interested in learning more but aren't able to attend these kind of sessions, don't know about these kind of sessions, or they just prefer to hear it from a trusted source such as yourselves. So we're going to go ahead and just go over what the needs are for voters with disabilities, those who have language needs, and those over 65. Because those tend to be most of our more vulnerable populations when it comes to voting. So I want to start with what we need to know about the accessible voting systems. The fact that Texas was the first state to require all new voting systems to be accessible to voters with disabilities, and that was established September 1st of 1999. They must provide practical and effective means to casting a secret ballot must be provided for folks. And then at every federal election, each polling place will offer at least one type of accessible voting equipment or direct record electronic device. So there has to be that accessibility in order for it to be considered accessible for a polling place. And then notice that I use the words at every federal election. So that'll come up again in the word of caution section, where we'll talk about the difference between federal and the non-federal elections. So voting directly on the system or assisting folks who are needing to and marking a paper ballot. So those are the ways in which that's classified as being able to help in or providing accessible voting systems in the state of Texas. And again, this is according to the state law that was requiring this on September 1st of 1999. So depending on the kind of system voters with disabilities are able to use headphones or some kind of assistive device to help them vote independently and secretly. And again, all of this goes back to being able to have a safe, secure, secret ballot accessible to folks who would need to have that access. So the word of caution, there are certain non-federal elections that are held in counties of a population of less than 20,000, where accessible machines may not be available at every polling place, and that's kind of an accepted loss. It's not acceptable. That should not be confused with being acceptable, just that there is a recognition that in non-federal elections, if the population of a county is less than 20,000, that there may not be accessible machines available. So in the case that is something that you're concerned with, I know with Travis and Williamson County, that may not be an issue, but if you know somebody in the state of Texas who is part of a county that sounds like they would qualify and they would need to know this information, let them know that contacting their early voting clerk of that county or that political subdivision that's holding the election 21 days before the election is needed. And so in all of these slides, you might see that there is going to be a section that says a source and where that information is coming from. This is coming straight from the votetexas.gov website, which is the Secretary of State website for the state of Texas. So something that we also need to know of is the Help America Vote Act, or HAVA. The HAVA Act was passed by Congress in 2002. It was intended to make the voting process more inclusive and accessible so that more Americans can become registered voters and participate in elections. Excuse me. Disability Rights Texas is the advocacy agency that is designated to help ensure accessible voting here in Texas, according to HAVA. So if you have any questions or if you want to look at more information, disabilityrightstx.org will be the website that you want to look up for information regarding the Help America Vote Act or Disability Rights Texas and their role in helping with those who have disability issues. So what do? They answer questions, they respond to legal violations, which is a really big and important thing for an organization to be able to take on. And they troubleshoot problems related to disability voter rights. And they do this at no cost. So they also help educate voters, election workers, and those folks who are in the polling and election process about the rights of those people who are voters with disabilities. They provide voter registration information to people with disabilities. They provide us advice about access to polling places on election day. So they're available to provide advice. Another issue would be is if there are organizations or county elections officers who do work in tandem with Disability Rights Texas in order to make sure that that advice is being heard. And so if you're curious about that, you might want to ask your county elections office what their relationship is with Disability Rights Texas. They also work with groups representing people with disabilities. The League of Women Voters of the Austin area has often worked with Rev Up, which is a local group that advocates for disability voting rights and voter registration and outreach and getting out the vote. But also we have worked with Disability Rights Texas in registering voters and serving polling places for accessibility. And that's a very, very big and important thing to do. And I know I've said that a couple of times already, but I can't stress enough just how important it is to be able to have an organization that's able to advocate for and poll for and really kind of look at the needs of the disability voter groups or population to be able to have access and equal access and equitable access to polling places. So if you feel like you're interested in finding out more information, again, it's disabilityrightstexas.org, and you can look up more information on that organization there. And so we'll move on to time to vote. So that's kind of like a really brief, very quick, I understand, processing of how and why it's important to understand, like the foundation, the groundwork to understanding this next portion, the in-person voting, additional information for voters with language needs, and ballot by mail. The information tonight for ballot by mail is going to be kind of strictly what's in the Secretary of State website. I do know that some of you might have questions regarding ballot by mail. Again, I would suggest if you have any questions regarding that, you can definitely put them into our Zoom question and answer box. For those of you tuning in on Facebook, we are also monitoring the comment section for the live stream. So if you have any questions, you can put them there as well, and we'll try our best to get those answered. Well, I'll go ahead and continue. So let's start with in-person needs for those with disabilities over 65 and language needs. And if there's at some point a question that you have regarding in-person needs that you might not think that's going to be encapsulated in here, please do feel free to ask in the question and answer. Even if you ask the question and eventually do answer that, it'd be just good for posterity, and we can always go over that again for folks who might be catching it in the question and answer portion and miss this portion. So what do you need to do when you arrive if you are somebody who has a disability, who has some kind of a need, a physical need at the polling place? Would be the first thing to tell the election official. There are election judges, election workers, poll workers that will be available, who will, I'm sorry, I'm going to resume recording right now. So I will go ahead and continue here. But we need to, yes, so you want to tell the election officials that you are somebody who might need extra assistance. If you're there for curbside voting, that's when you'd want to let somebody know that you'll need assistance with that. You actually want to let them know ahead of time, but we'll go over that very briefly. So who can help you? Voters can be assisted by anyone they choose who is not an election worker. They can be assisted by 2 election workers on election day or 1 election worker during early voting. But they cannot be assisted by their employer, an agent of their employer, or an agent or an officer of the union that they might be a part of. And that has a long history in the United States with being tied to employers buying voting and so forth. So, or buying votes for select officials. And so what do you need to know? You don't need to prove a disability if and when you need to go to a polling place and have access to curbside voting, or if you need assistance in voting. You just need to be able to say, I have a disability, I have an issue, I can't vote, or maybe I can't read the screen as well, but you don't have to tell people that. You just let them know that you need the assistance. So for curbside voting, if you're unable to vote, physically enter a polling place, if you, especially right now during COVID-19, are unable to get within proximity of folks, that might be something for you to consider. Just in case, I should say, if you are somebody who is afflicted with COVID-19 and you go to vote in person, if you plan to go alone to vote curbside, call ahead. Make sure you have the county elections office of the county that you live in and you're registered to vote in, their phone number, and let them know that you plan on doing curbside voting, and have them assist you with that. They'll let you know exactly where you need to show up for curbside voting, and they'll be prepared to take your vote when you do arrive. So generally speaking, you may vote curbside during the early voting period. So there's additional information for voters with language needs. So this is extremely important for voters who cannot speak English or who only communicate in sign language. They can have an interpreter available to them to help them interpret with the person at the polling place, the elections officer, who maybe they don't speak the same language that they do, or they're not familiar with American Sign Language. As long as that interpreter, again, is not an agent of that voter's employer, is not that voter's employer, is not a an officer or agent of the labor union that the voter belongs to. So the interpreter can also translate the ballot language if the voter cannot read the languages on the ballot. So there is a notice that if the voter is deaf and has no interpreter that can accompany them with communicating with poll workers, the voter should contact their local election officials beforehand and request assistance. And that's, you know, expected for some folks. That's, you know, they already know ahead of time that that's what they should be they're dealing with. There's a huge population of folks who have different needs. So don't be afraid to call your county elections office and let them know ahead of time if you do have a specific need. And especially if you are voting or you know somebody who will be voting alone due to circumstances and they have a disability need, whether it's for language, they speak a different language or understand in a different language, or they require ASL assistance, or they're just, you know, they're unable to walk into the polling place. Please, please, please let people know that they should feel encouraged to call their county elections offices for that help. So for ballot by mail, it's really important for folks to call their local or county election office to request an application to vote by mail. That may not be the way that that particular office would prefer to have folks request their ballot by mail. They might tell them, okay, it's great that you called, but we need an application in writing. But to call first and just to make sure what the requirement is, how can they ask for that application? How can they get that ballot by mail sent to them so that they can start that process? So asking for assistance from somebody that they trust, whether it's yourself or somebody that you know that is voting, that's voting by mail and they need assistance, that helper's name and address needs to be on that form as well as having their signature on it. So that way that validates that they had help from somebody who, again, is not an employer, is not an agent of their employer or an agent or officer of a union that they belong to. In this particular case as well, that's not part of a political party or candidate campaign that's helping assist them through the process. And that's important. In a second, we'll get to that. So we want to address the application to the early voting clerk of your election office. Again, when you call that local or county election office, or when somebody you know is calling that county or local election office, you want to make sure that they also ask who to address that application for ballot by mail or their ballot by mail, or their ballot by mail as well. So you can request your ballot by mail as early as 60 days before the election. So for the November 3rd election, it means right now, making sure that you have your application. If you need to fill an application out, having it ready and sent out tomorrow, tonight, if possible. If you need to apply for ballot by mail, the sooner that you can get that done, the better. The Travis County Elections Office is highly encouraging folks to be able to fill out their application to request ballot by mail as soon as possible so that they can get their ballot as early as possible and to be able to submit it as early as possible, given all of the situations that are going on with the U.S. Postal Service right now. So applications must be submitted through the method requested by the elections office. So that's, again, why you want to call the county election office or the local election office. When you request that application to vote by mail, making sure that you're submitting it in the way that they're going to accept it. So, for example, having a courier service, as long as it's approved by that county's office to be able to be delivered, a contract carrier to drop it off. Right now, I know that there are different locations around the country that are looking at having your ballot by mail or your applications possibly put in these kind of like mailboxes that are like elections offices official. So you want to know exactly how that application can be submitted as opposed to just kind of going with it and guessing and then not having your application submit in time and then hopefully not getting to the point where you don't get a ballot by mail if you need one. So for help reading, marking, or mailing your ballot, again, using a trusted person to be able to help with that. You want to make sure that you're working with somebody that is working with you in your personal best interests. So this goes back to working with folks. There are a lot of folks who work with a partisan party or with a candidate campaign, and they would definitely offer to help with getting your ballot filled out. But at times that's actually not recommended because you don't know if that ballot would get mailed in at all. It has happened. It's recommended to decline because if they decide that they can help you submit it through a contract carrier from the campaign office, if it's delivered to the elections office by a common or contract carrier from the address of a candidate or a campaign's headquarters, your ballot will be rejected. It would be akin to having somebody show up to a polling place in official campaign T-shirts or pins or some kind of advertising and helping you actually press the buttons at the polling place. So they can't submit your ballot by mail for you. That's very, very important. So make sure that it is a trusted person. It's somebody who has no other interests, perhaps, to help you vote, and that you would feel secure with having them sign off on your ballot with you. So let's see. If you receive help with your ballot, again, the helper's name and address must be put on the carrier envelope, and they must sign for it as well. So there'll be COVID safety and special accommodations at polling places. So if you were able to participate in, or you did participate in the primary runoffs in July, I know not everybody had participated in those, but that's kind of a primer for what's going to be available at the November 3rd elections. Masks, hand sanitizer, finger coverings, social distancing, and plexiglass screens were all available in Williamson County. There was an encouragement to use pencils and pens, and just to kind of the pencil tip with the eraser to type or to push in your ballot selections. I know that in Travis County, they had what they call finger cots or finger coverings, where they're like these just tiny, not complete gloves just for one finger, and you're able to press the buttons on the polling screen. Curbside voting, again, is some of the safety and special accommodations. If you are in need of curbside voting, please call ahead to your polling place or to your your county elections offices, and they'll be able to help you with that and set up your assisting you for curbside voting. So for those with disabilities and language barriers, we're recapping. There'll be audio capabilities available if requested. There should be wheelchair accessibility available at all polling places. If you find that there is no wheelchair accessibility, again, disability rights, tx.org, Disability Rights Texas, you want to contact them and let them know about the polling place inaccessibility issues. There would be, in Texas, we do have a large Spanish-speaking population, so having a Spanish option is really important, as well as private assistance. Again, if you, as long as you're not having your employer, an agent of your employer, or an agent of a labor union or union that you belong to assisting you, you should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple of questions that I have come up on the question and answer box here in Zoom. So example of other services that are trying to be like a Vote 411. It's essentially Vote 411 and then type something else. If you don't get .org, and you don't see And actually, even if you do see things that look like the League of Women Voters, it's best to double check with the League of Women Voters of Texas area, of Austin area. If you're streaming in from another part of the country, another part of Texas, just checking in with the League of Women Voters of your area and seeing where their links to Vote 411 link up to, but it should always be vote411.org. Again, it's just, you know, people who take advantage of a URL ending that isn't part of the, you know, isn't the .org, because they know that people kind of default to using .com. You know, they might think of .us. You know, there's a whole bunch of other dot that they can type in. So will these slides be posted somewhere online for us to access? They actually won't, but the broadcast will be posted. So it'll be on Facebook Live. Chances are really good that we're going to end up streaming or downloading the Facebook Live broadcast to post via YouTube. So you'll be able to access this again on Facebook and our LWV Austin area YouTube page. So, and if you have any questions at all, you are always welcome to email us at lwvaustin@lwvaustin.org in order for us to help assist you with that. And I'll recap some of these URLs so that way you all can, and I'll put them in the chat box here and on Facebook so that folks can go ahead and refer back to them. Does every polling location, not just Travis County, need to follow COVID safety protocols and accommodations? I would imagine so. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm sure that every county might vary according to kind of their elections office rules. But given that COVID-19 is just easily transmissible, very easily spread, and also a lot of our, historically, a lot of polling workers are people of an older age group. There is a lot more caution being taken about safety protocols and accommodations for COVID-19. So I'm sorry, Jill, I'm sure that wasn't a satisfactory answer, but if you feel like you need to ask your elections office, your county elections office about that, please do. Again, it's imperative that if you have any questions at all about your specific county, that you call your county elections office, as they may have things that change the closer that we do get to early voting and the voting date. So our VP of organization here at the Austin Area League has typed in for the phone numbers for our elections office, Travis County Elections, that's 512-854-4996. So again, Travis County Elections Office is 512-854-4996. For Williamson County Elections Office, it's 512-943-1630. Williamson County Elections Office, 512-943-1630. For Hays County Elections Office, it's 512-393-7310. Again, Hays County Elections Office is 512-393-7310. So thank you, Debbie, for sending out those phone numbers for those elections offices. I'll repeat that at the end of the session as well, so that we can go ahead and make sure that we have those written down if needed. And we'll be sharing those on the Facebook chat as well. So you can refer back to those. Okay, so let's see. So special circumstances at the polls, a couple of things to know. The election protection hotline, it's incredibly important. We had scheduled Josh Levin of the Texas Civil Rights Project to assist us today with this presentation to talk about the election protection services and what it is and what it means. But so you know, kind of briefly, election protection is a kind of a national effort from different organizations, the League of Women Voters, national is a big part of this, to make sure that folks who are going in to vote, voters who are participating in the election process, whether it's early voting or in a day of voting, especially, are able to go vote freely, to have a secure and secret ballot, and are free of intimidation. So if you find yourself in a situation where you feel intimidated or you're being faced with difficult polling officers who are maybe making kind of an extra effort to keep you from voting, and you have everything squared away, you have your voter certificate, your ID with you, you're making sure to adhere to the rules of not having any kind of political paraphernalia on you, you're keeping safe distance, adhering to COVID safety rules, but somehow you're still not being allowed to have a free and fair vote, then you want to make sure you have the election protection hotline number, which is 866-687-8683. The election protection hotline also has multiple phone numbers in different languages as well. So I'm hoping that Josh will be here soon so that we can go ahead and have him discuss. Oh, we do. Great. Let me go ahead and have him unmute for a second.
Hello, hi. Sorry about that. I was wrapping up another event. How's it going?
Great. How are you, Josh?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us today. So I was going over election protection hotline, the number, but I want to go ahead. We're going to get back to the special circumstances at the poll slide. But since you're here, I want to talk about, or have you talk about, the election protection project. What is it? What should people know about it? And how can they become maybe more aware of what they need if they ever need to contact it? So
yes.
I'm going to go ahead and pause my share. I know that you said that you needed share screen access. Is that correct?
Yeah,
okay.
I have a couple of slides if that's okay.
Okay, and let me make sure. Okay, wait. There we go, stop share. And let me go ahead and, okay. There we go.
All right, excellent. Perfect. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Let's see. I know I can, but I don't think it counts for me. So.
Do we have somebody in the chat? Can somebody write down if they can see?
Yes, Anna Nguyen, thank you for letting us know that you can see it. Josh?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so hello, hi. Sorry for being a little late today. It's voter registration day. I'm sure everybody has been busy and bombarded by a million different asks. So I'm here to talk about Election Protection Coalition, who we are, what we're doing, and how y'all can get involved. And so a little bit of history real quick. 2000, a lot of us remember the Al Gore versus George Bush election. 200 votes separated Al Gore from George Bush. Literally, the deciding factor was whether a semi-partially hole-punched piece of paper counted as a vote or not. We had months of court battles over those 200 votes. Eventually, Al Gore conceded the race to Bush, but we found out later that maybe he shouldn't have done that because Al Gore definitely won that election. So the National Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights decided that they never wanted to be caught off guard when sort of a big electoral issue happened, and that too often we rely on parties to spring into action to fight their own battles. And it's difficult for parties because their funding is so tied to the cycle that if they don't win an election, they oftentimes cannot keep up court battles. And then voters are the ones who lose out because then nobody's fighting that battle on their behalf. So they decided to start what's called the Election Protection Coalition, which is now operating in all 50 states and every territory in the United States that votes. And basically, along with their other national partners like Common Cause and ACLU, they operate all types of voter protection efforts during the elections. But Texas is a bigger problem than most states. Not only are we a bigger state, but we have a lot of issues historically with denying people of color the right to vote and making it really difficult and putting up a lot of barriers in place. So we decided, a bunch of organizations decided that we needed to beef up our operations in Texas. So along with those 3 national partners, and of course, League of Women Voters and Texas Civil Rights Project, we are the steering committee for the Texas Election Protection that is working around the clock, year round, no matter what election is or is not going on, to make sure that our elections are constantly being upgraded to be the best that they possibly can be. So before the election, we're doing a lot of work with a whole bunch of different community groups to advocate for things like drive-through voting or 24-hour polling locations, or counties that are sending out 65 and older voters applications for vote by mail, things like that. A lot of these reforms are in part due to the efforts that a lot of organizations are doing to advocate in a coordinated manner. We're also doing as much as possible as we can to educate people on their rights to vote, because in Texas, we make it very difficult and very confusing and very intimidating to vote. And then we create a system that makes people feel dumb, I should say, for asking questions about voting, right? Think about it. Have you ever had a question about how to register or anything like that, and you think to yourself, I don't want to ask that because I feel like I should know that. That happens, that's intentional. That is the system that is set up. That is voter suppression. And that is one of the main things that we are doing to try to help protect voters, is educate them as much as possible. And then also, when the elections are going on, we want to make sure that we are putting up a strong of an effort with a defensive army of help to make sure every voter who seeks out our help can cast a ballot if possible. So we have a lot of volunteer opportunities that we work with. And before I talk about those, I just want to talk about something that I'm sure y'all know, because League of Women Voters has been doing this before any of the rest of us in Texas, but that's our poll worker recruitment strategy. We all know that we're at a shortage of poll workers, and that most of the poll workers are 70-year-old white women who I absolutely love. My mom is one of them. But it's really important that we have a reflective, diverse workforce, because oftentimes the people who have the easiest time voting are the people who look like the poll workers, mostly because of community and communication issues and barriers that are in place. But if you think about that, think about how many people aren't 70-year-old white women that need to vote and oftentimes face barriers simply because they don't have somebody who understands ways to speak with them. So we're encouraging everyone, if you're able and willing to go to a restaurant, to go shopping, please consider being a poll worker, especially if you speak another language. And I'm sure you all know that we have a high school poll worker program as well. As long as you're 16 and enrolled in a public, private, or home school and have permission from guardian and principal, you can get paid. Two absences from school are allowed, so that's really fun. And it gets people hooked on this process from a young age, and it gets them involved in the process. It gives them a good understanding, which is really important because we don't have civics lessons anymore, as I'm sure y'all know. Another way that we are helping out is we are operating a giant network of legal volunteers. We are roping in the legal community, y'all, and we are putting people on the phones for our toll-free hotline that we were just talking about. So that way, if anybody has a question or a problem, they can ask those questions. And if it's something that one of our hotline volunteers can't help, we are training a whole bunch of lawyers to be able to spring into action to solve issues as they come up. So I usually make the joke that we are training these people to either sue counties or threaten to sue counties or something like that, because I don't know what lawyers do, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in that range of suit. So we're doing a lot of that. And then for some of y'all, I know might have helped out in the past as a poll monitor, where you stand outside of a polling location asking voters if they have questions. We're not doing that this year because of the pandemic, but we have switched this into 2 brand new programs. So the first one is something that we are developing in Texas. We are the only state that's doing this, and we are creating this program hopefully for the long-term use. Basically, as a virtual poll monitor, we are going to be listening on social media for everybody's voting problems. Companies already do this to sell you really specific vacations or a tote bag with a quote that you love on it. You ever think to yourself, like, how do they know? So it's Big Brother basically exists, and it's used to market things to you. We're going to use that same technology that's already out there, and we're going to solve voting problems. So if someone goes on Twitter and says, oh, I just tried to vote, but it took 6 hours, our software is going to be able to recognize that and then we'll assign someone to reach out to that voter to try to make sure we A, know what polling location was 6 hours long, and B, try to get them a nearby polling location that doesn't have as long of a time. So that's our virtual poll monitor program. It's really cool. It's brand new. You don't have to have any type of background to do it. We just ask that you're not afraid of social media, that you know the difference between Twitter and Facebook, you know what a hashtag is, but we'll train you how to do everything else. And it's going to be really fun. We're really excited to do that. And then our last volunteer opportunity that we have during this election is what we're calling a roving poll monitor or a driving poll monitor. This is somebody, we're going to assign you about 5 to 8 polling locations. And from your car, you're going to drive from polling location to polling location. And we have a checklist of a whole bunch of things we need you to be on the lookout for. Is there proper signage? Is the location even open? Are there people outside harassing anybody? There's a whole lot of things that we're going to be able to tell from the outside that we'll be able to hopefully fix if there are any problems, so that way more voters aren't going to face these obstacles in the future. And so we have all of these really great opportunities. And I'm going to put in the link, a way to sign up for all of those. It's texaselectionprotection.com/next-steps. You can go to that website and you can sign up for any or all of these roles. I will also tell you, I know that y'all are doing Power to the Polls work over there, and that's great. We love them. So maybe use that link. I don't want to like step on anybody's toes over there, but certainly if you want to be a legal volunteer or a virtual or driving poll monitor, use that link and you can sign up to help. And that's pretty much all I had. We're really excited for the election. We've got 3 weeks till voting begins. None of us are sleeping, but we're all so excited because we think a lot of counties have really taken this seriously. Special shout out to Harris County and Travis County for going above and beyond to make sure that there are enough polling locations, sanitation equipment, and that everybody is doing all that they can to make sure that we have safe and smart elections.
Thanks so much for all that information, Josh. And I know that for our attendees in Zoom, you might not be able to access the chat in terms of chatting with us, but you should be able to hit that chat button in your window and see the texaselectionprotection.com/next-steps URL that Josh was talking about. If you cannot, don't worry. I'm going to be putting that into the question and answer under Anna's yes, I can see it, Josh. So if you can see the question and answer box, it would be in there as well. So we have a question from Jill. Oh, Jill, I'm so sorry if I don't get your last name correctly, but I'm so sorry. But we have a question from a Jill C. Here in the question and answer box. What is the difference between a roving poll monitor and an elections inspector, I believe? Yes, dispatched by the Secretary of State. Is there a greater need to volunteer as a county poll worker or a state elections inspector?
I'm going to say the higher need is probably the poll worker. The reason why is because if we don't have enough poll workers, we close the polling locations. That's usually in Black and brown neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have state elections inspectors, which I'm not too familiar with, then the elections still can go on. I believe that that is just a person that's going around to monitor on behalf of the Secretary of State that nothing's going on. There's also something called a poll watcher, just to mm-hmm. add to confuse everybody. But so those are parties, place people in polling locations to monitor the election. Same thing as that. But I definitely think poll workers is the number one need because we cannot close any polling locations down. We already did that in the runoff. We had multiple counties closing polling locations because of COVID, and we can't let that happen again for the general.
Yeah, and I think I was getting ahead of myself here, Josh. I may have bumped you off of our share screen if you hadn't closed that up. But I did want to refer, actually, this was a great segue. I hadn't gotten to poll worker information just to get people that information to them in this session. When I saw you jump on, I preferred to just like have that conversation on election protection. So we're kind of working in reverse now. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up those slides for the poll worker information. So, and I did have some slides on Poll Watcher, but I didn't want to confuse folks on that. But if you are interested in kind of finding out some more information on the difference between a poll watcher and a poll worker, we can discuss it in the question and answer section coming up again. So if we have any other questions for Josh, now would be a good time to make sure that we ask them. If not, I will be moving into that poll worker information so that we are just aware of some of that info. And no pressure, we can always just also take in those questions as we move along. So let's see. All right, so what should we know about poll worker? And Josh, if you want to go ahead and stay on and jump in at any point, please feel free to do so. I'm just going to kind of briefly go over the how to help at the polling place, and specifically that poll worker information. The first thing you kind of want to do if you're interested is contacting your county election office. I had mentioned this earlier when we were discussing the voters with disabilities, voters over 65, or voters with language needs, that it's really important to make sure you contact your county elections office for any questions you might have, or to make sure that they are aware if you have curbside voting needs. But this also works if you want to be a poll worker. Josh did bring up that there is a Power to the Polls program that the League of Women Voters, Texas Civil Rights Project, we're all kind of working in tandem to be able to help folks who are interested in being poll workers connect with their county elections offices. You can find information again on that at lwvaustin.org. So political parties will offer suggestions to counties for election judges and deputy election judges. They'll also, that's where your poll watcher tie-in comes in as well. You can be a poll watcher for a political party. There's information on that we can go through in a second. So again, applying through powerthepolls.org or Work Elections. It's a website that is a project that's a working project, but you can look up information at Work Elections, their website. If you find that you are unable to meet the needs of being a poll worker, we still need people to help recruit new election workers. You can contact that county election administrator and ask them, what can you do to be able to help recruit folks who may be able to work as an election or a poll worker? Again, Josh brought up how there's a high school program. If you are at least 16 years old and interested in helping democracy work at the local level, having high schoolers and college students participate in being able to do poll work is incredibly invaluable. Josh did bring up that some of our poll workers, most of our poll workers tend to be older folks who right now are the most susceptible to COVID-19 complications and contracting COVID-19. So we want to make sure we are taking care of our elderly as well, and providing poll workers and having poll workers step up who are younger, who are able to, as Josh put it, if you're going out to go shopping at HEB and you're being precautious and you're wearing a mask, it's pretty much the same thing in a polling place environment. So what does a county poll worker do? They check in your voters, you answer voter questions, you help folks in terms of how, if you've ever gone to vote, hopefully you have, and if you haven't, you're going to be a first-time voter, something that you'll need to know is that once you walk in, you'll be asked to verify your name and your address with a poll worker. Then you'll be asked or escorted by another poll worker to the polling booth. And so any of those roles can be filled by you, by somebody who's interested in working at the polling place. And as Josh said, without enough poll workers, polling places do get shut down through the election, the process and the time period of election. So it's really important to be able to have enough poll workers to be able to help out with everything from just having people helping them figure out how to work those polling booths, and it's submitting for some of these new polling booths. You have like a separate machine. You have to kind of feed your ballot through everything from checking people in to answering questions to language. If there's somebody who has a certain language need and that polling worker happens to also speak that language, it's really important to have folks to help out with that. So also any COVID-19 related tasks, which of course is new for all of us, is really important. Training is provided, right now it's being provided online with the Texas Secretary of State. I know that with Travis County Elections Office, they're doing a fantastic job of processing folks to be well trained to be poll election workers as well. Oh, Markeisha Mitchell asks, what's the difference between a poll worker and a clerk? That's an excellent question. Let me see if I can remember the answer to this one. Josh, would you happen to know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so poll worker is the umbrella term to describe everybody who works at the polling location. The clerk is one of the specific roles. So that's the most common role that you see in counties that you were describing, the people who check them in, who help them do that. We also have presiding judges is another role. Some other, like Harris County is doing like high schoolers specifically to do tech. So the clerk is just one of the roles. An election worker is just the generic umbrella term for everybody who works for the elections.
Yeah. So Markeisha, there you go. A poll worker is the general term for all of folks who are working at a polling place, and a clerk is specifically somebody who helps with the check-in process. And again, as Josh said, there's also presiding judges who kind of help out with that different polling issues as well. So yeah, so poll workers are trained on the voting process and election rules. Each county provides training on their specific election equipment and procedures. That's really, really important to note, because not that we don't have like a blanket kind of machine that's used in all counties that vary. It might vary from county to county. It might be the same general idea, but the machines might have a very different specific need. So you'll want to, make sure that wherever you would like to help out as a polling worker, that you are very well aware of what kind of machine you're working with, and kind of don't take it for granted. If you lived in one county for a while and then moved to another county, that you're going to know exactly what kind of machine that county is working with. So there's also going to be specific election worker training in regards to COVID. So the polling safety measures in place, as you can see on the screen, you have the health protocols that the Secretary of State has provided, both in May and in June, the CDC recommendations for election and polling place safety. But this did come up earlier about what kind of COVID safety protocols and accommodations. If every polling location needs to follow them, you're going to want to check with your county election official for it says country specific, but it's county specific guidelines. Let's see. Is there anything else we should add to that, Josh?
This looks pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, this source, and this is actually from an informational session that you were participating in, Josh, with the League of Women Voters of Texas, where you covered county elections, election poll worker information. So again, these links will be put into the chat at the end of this session. When we're done with the slides, I'll turn off the recording, but please stick around for a little bit so that it can be added into the chat box for those of you tuning in on Facebook. I will be adding that as a comment in Facebook so that you all can look up these resources yourselves as they've come up through these slides. So be an election worker. If you're interested in doing this work, lwaustin.org/poll worker. If you are able to use a QR code on your phone, you're able to take a picture of a QR code and look it up later. There's our QR code on the side there. You want to just go ahead and make sure you have your phone nice and steady. Have a picture. I believe you can either take a picture and then have it kind of look it up for you later, or if you have a QR scanner on your phone, it'll immediately scan the QR code and take you to the website. But For those old school folks like myself, it's lwbaustin.org/poll worker for you to be able to look that up. So yeah, and we jumped ahead. We did election protection. We do have a question and answer session. Sorry, allergies are bad today. If you have any other questions, please do feel free to take advantage of the question and answer box. If not, we'll go ahead and proceed as it is 7 o'clock, and I do like to keep people from hanging around too long because I know that we all have something that we need to get to. Today is National Voter Registration Day, so if you haven't had the chance to register to vote, please register to vote. If you know folks who haven't registered to vote, the League of Women Voters of the Austin area is registering people this week. We have been, and we were in the news yesterday registering folks at the Alamo Draft House on Slaughter Lane, getting people to drive and register to vote kind of from your car. So if you need information on where to register to vote, lwbaustin.org. It's ORG. So, okay. Well, I'm going to skip ahead to the last couple slides. Also, just so you all know, we are getting to the end of the census deadline. I know there's a lot of conflicting news out there about delays and not delays, but let's all just make sure that we get our census information in by September 30th of this year. Make sure that you are counted. Make sure your friends, your family, your coworkers, people that you know are counted for the 2020 census. There is a lot that it rides on being counted in the census, and it only happens every 10 years. A lot changes within 10 years, but to determine federal funding is a huge part of the census, as well as redistricting. The census takes into account the population of an area at every 10 years, and after that, then they kind of figure out whether they need to create different districts, add people, change district lines. This is extremely important. Please get yourself counted for the census today at 2020census.gov. So, and again, I don't want to let people forget that today is National Voter Registration Day. Please make sure you are registered to vote. Please make sure that your active status, if you have been registered to vote, don't take for granted that you have registered in the past. Always make sure that your current registration is up to date, that your current address is up to date. You can look up that information on your county elections office site. For Travis County, it's votetravis.com, I believe. And I hate making myself a liar of these things. But for Williamson County, you can look at wilco.org and find the elections office information and see if you're registered to vote. Your status should be marked active if you find that information, and you want to go ahead and make sure that you are active. If you can't find your information, the best thing would always be to just register yourself to vote. If you've recently moved, please register at your new location. That's extremely important to do. And so if you have any questions about voter registration and you'd like to kind of have more information in depth, we do have this session available on our YouTube page at LWV Austin Area and on our Facebook page at LWV Austin Area. So thank you so much to everybody who attended today. Our next session will be Friday, October 2nd at 5:30 p.m. You can register via Zoom or catch the live stream on Facebook Live at LWV Austin Area. Have a great Tuesday night. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we'll see some really strong election protection outreach for you. And also we'll have some really good positive results coming up for this coming election. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night. All right. Okay. Okay. So everyone who is on here. Oh, Jill, thank you so much for participating as well. Let me go ahead and get you all who are still on here those links so that you can kind of have that information. Let me see, lwvaustin.org. I've said this one many, many times, but vote411.org. Those are a couple of the web links that you, maybe if I